I went to Magdeburg, a city in what was considered East Germany, by the Elbe River. It's a medieval city, and my maternal grandparents used to live there since the beginning of the 20th century. We were invited to participate in something called Stolperstein ceremony. The translation of Stolperstein means stumbling stones. And it's a concept created by an artist in Germany, Günter Demnig. The German government, who tried to immortalize, in a way, Jews that were killed during the Holocaust, wanted to be able to put maybe something on the buildings, but here lived so-and-so, but the homeowners were against it in many cities, so they decided that they had to look for another idea. So Günter Demnig came up with the idea saying that basically the first thing that one forgets about people is their name. His idea was that if you put these stones on the street a few millimeters above the street, when you're walking you will stumble on it, and it will force you to look down and wonder what it is. In the block where my grandparents live, they put these two Stolpersteins, stumbling stones, and it read the following: "Here lived Moses Horowitz, born in 1900, deported to Poland in 1938, was killed in 1942 in the Tarnow ghetto." For my grandmother, it said, "Here lived Marie Horowitz, born Brunner, born in 1902. She ran away to Belgium in 1940, was deported in 1942 to Riga, and was killed in 1944 in Stutthof, which is a concentration camp." My grandparents were basically a young couple that lived in Magdeburg, while my grandmother's family all lived in Berlin. And because he was on the road a lot, she felt very lonely. So after a while, she decided she wanted to go to Berlin and meet up with the rest of her family. She had 10 siblings. My grandmother was the only one that was murdered during the Holocaust. All other 10 siblings survived. I went with my sisters, my two sisters, and they asked that one of us prepare a speech, and I gave my speech at the ceremony. There were people from the community. Around the Stolperstein was there were Nerot Zikaron, there were flowers, and there was a young boy who played the clarinet. And then the woman in charge of cultural affairs from the municipality spoke. One of the people from the organization that sponsored, also gives money to these ceremonies, also spoke. Somebody said Kaddish. There were over 50 people there. Plus there were people regular from the street walking, and clearly they said, "What is this all about?" They questioned, and then we showed them the Stolpersteins. They looked at it, and one woman said, "Oh, I saw this already in another place." And one more interesting thing was, the engineer of the city was there too. And I asked him, "How come you're here?" He said, "Well, I brought the blueprints of the original street address where your grandparents lived." They asked us for family information, so that's where I had to speak to a lot of people from my mother's family. Being that she's a Horowitz, it wasn't an easy task, because Horowitz is an enormous family, dispersed in the 17th century all over Poland. So it took some interviewing and speaking to different people. The entire experience was very moving. Even here in Israel, having to do all the research of the family, and then send them because they wanted it to appear in their local newspaper, because they were announcing the Stolperstein ceremony. They also wanted to give background on who these people were. So even doing the research was very moving. And while doing the research, I also discovered that I had a great-grandmother who died in Magdeburg. Because of this great-grandmother who died there, it turned into a roots kind of a trip, because we were determined to find her kever. Germans as Germans, everything was catalogued and filed, and they had exactly in what part of the graveyard it was. The matzevas were in deplorable state. Many on the floor, broken down, with a lot of green moss on it. Nothing was legible that was written on it, except for the new ones. The new ones really all had Russian names, because today the community has 600 Jews. 598 are of Russian origin, 2 are not. There were no signs, nothing. So at some point where we didn't come up with anything, we divided ourselves into 4. Each one went to one side of the cemetery to look. We were looking for Necha Horowitz, who died in 1925. My sisters and I were already resigned to leave because, we tried. And the man who took us, he says, well, you came all the way here, you're not giving up. He said, look, let me see if I can find a cluster of Farim that were of people buried during the 1920s. Maybe that'll be a way to do it. So we followed him, and at a certain point he said, oh, here there is 1924, 1923, So we said, yeah, well, we couldn't read anything. Nothing. In fact, I was standing in front of this big matzeva with a rounded dome, and I'm looking at it, couldn't make it out, and at some point he sort of put his hands out and he said, well, I guess we're not successful enough. And as I'm walking away from the matzeva that I was standing in front, from the corner of my eye, I see a hey, a vav, and I said, oh my God, it could be Horn, but it could be Horowitz. So I went back to it, and with my hand, I tried to clean off the green stuff that was on it, and I see Horowitz. And then I continued cleaning, and I see it's Necha Horowitz. Mm-hmm. So that was my great-grandmother's kever. And we set the hill in there. And I imagine that since the 1930s, nobody was visited that kever, and nobody set a hill in there.